Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire. Hi, Youth Worker Nation. This is Doug Edwards, your host on Youth Worker on Fire. And today I'm at NRB, and today we have a very special guest, Joe Batlock.
Yes, sir.
And you're a Teen Challenge, right?
I am.
Tell me about your life story, just a short synopsis up till now.
I was raised in a home where mom and dad taught me the gospel. By God's grace, it took root. Felt a call to ministry, did youth pastoring, and then pastored, and then felt a call to military chaplaincy. And so my wife and family and I served for 30 years as Army chaplains and traveled around bringing the gospel to the troops in the trenches.
Hey, and thank you for serving.
That's my privilege.
Yeah, that was an amazing thing to do. How did you end up in Teen Challenge?
Well, when I transitioned from military ministry in 2005, I was absolutely convinced of what I was going to do, and the Lord convinced me of something else and called me to serve in Teen Challenge. And we served in Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina region for 9 years, and then a year and a half ago, when I was convinced I was going to do something else,
yes,
he called me to serve as the president of Teen Challenge in the national office.
God likes to do that, doesn't he?
He loves to do that.
He does. For those people who don't understand Teen Challenge, it's hard to believe that people don't, but this is also for different places in the world as well as the United States. Give us a little background on Teen Challenge. I know it, but I want those people who don't know anything about it to understand.
Well, with absolutely no hesitation, to be straightforward, the Teen Challenge is the oldest long-term residential Christ-centered drug and alcohol restoration program in America. It has the track record that basically points to God as the life changer and points to people as those who have hope in spite of how deep and dark addiction is. Been around since 1958. And shortly into the journey forward, it moved very quickly into an adult program. So although we still have over 24 centers that serve adolescent boys and girls, most of the programs we have, the ministries we have about 175 adult ministries working with adult men, adult women, and moms and children.
All of that affects all of us.
All of us. Based on the National Institute of Drug Addiction, it states that every addict has a minimum of 4 people that they directly, not indirectly, that they directly impact negatively. If you take 40 million known addicts in America, that is over half the American population that in some way, shape, or form is impacted by addiction.
Those are crazy numbers.
Really crazy.
And you can't comprehend it.
Yeah.
I've worked with students for 37 years on a professional level and a volunteer level in the public schools. Unless you're around that, you don't get those numbers. But if you're around it, they're still astounding.
They are.
Those numbers, but you get it because you are seeing the faces of adolescents and you understand that world and their parents.
Well, it's true. And what's amazing about addiction is we always picture the person laying in a gutter somewhere that's high from drugs. The majority of addicts today are functional addicts. There's the mom and dad who go to school, who pay the bills, who have mortgages and car payments. It's the kids who still go to high school and college. They just cannot live without a daily, if not a weekly, fix on whatever their chemical of choice may be.
That's right. How many facilities did you say you had around the country? We
have 179 adult programs, and we have 24 adolescent programs. We're in every state in the United States, plus 1,100 overseas.
And tell me about your founder.
Well, David Wilkerson's the founder.
Yeah.
He was the Pennsylvania preacher who just felt called very specifically to the streets of New York.
Yeah.
He went there. He was thrown out of court 3 times in a row because the judge said, you have no business here. He slept in the back of his car in New York City. You talk about crazy.
Yes.
And what God did, he didn't open up the door for him to go to jail to help those 7 boys, teenage boys on trial for murder. Mm-hmm. But he did open up the doors to the gang strongholds, because when the gang members saw the news that this crazy preacher was thrown out of court, they decided that he was their friend. And so they invited him into the drug den, into the gang den, and they thought that they had a friend move in. And indeed, he was their friend because he told them about the amazing love of Jesus.
Yeah, it's a very difficult story, but a very strong man.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable to watch that.
Crossing the Switchblade, for those who don't know the book, older book, but an amazing man. You know, amazing men and women do amazing things. And as far as negative things that negative people do and bring about negativity, positive people like him bring a tidal wave.
They do. And, you know, really, and all that's so true, and it points us to an amazing God who loves us with an amazing love and calls us by his grace, ready to clean us up and move us on. What a great God.
Tell me one of your worst moments in life. We relate in student ministry and anywhere in life with people's worst moments and their best moments. But we especially, unfortunately, we really relate with the worst moments. What was one of those worst moments in ministry? It doesn't have to be Teen Challenge, any of those places.
Well, let me keep it for Teen Challenge. Had this one young guy come into my office one day. He was in his early 20s, had a long history of addiction. Unfortunately, he started by being given drugs as a 10-year-old by his older brother. And he tumbled into addiction, been in and out of many different short-term programs. And he came in, he told me his story, and it's a story where you just say, isn't that amazing how God changes lives? However, a recovering addict is no different than you and me. In order for you and I to move forward, we have to keep our head in the gospel. We have to keep our knees bent in prayer, our hands extended in service, and our lives surrounded in accountability. And this guy, after he completed the program, did well for a couple years and then stopped doing those 4 things over time until finally he ended up back in his addiction and he ended up dead from an overdose. And when you get those stories, I wish I could tell you we had a 100% success rate. We don't, because sin just sometimes has such tough clutches and people make choices. One of our favorite expressions, because it's true, not because we like it, is first you make your choices and then your choices make you.
Yes.
And that's true both in the positive world and in the negative world. So it's those stories, but we've got hundreds and hundreds more where that didn't happen, and we thank God for it.
Tell me your best story.
Best story was this one young guy came to me. He was 28 years old. He was a high school football star, a college football star. Got an injury. He was a party boy, liked alcohol, got an injury, became addicted to prescription meds as a result of the surgery, and then he began to tumble for 8 years. He was finally arrested, and he was a double felon for how he was marketing drugs. And then one day, his mom found out she didn't know the Lord. She needed some help, and she found Teen Challenge on the internet. She called Teen Challenge. She ended up in a Teen Challenge program. And one day, because he was playing the game, as they all do, and figured, instead of going to prison, I'll go to Teen Challenge and I'll just play the game. And so he was acting out his behavior, and he ended up being put on timeout, so to speak, in the chapel. And what that means in Teen Challenge world is you go to the chapel, you sit there for 8 hours, and the only thing you can take with you is a notebook and your Bible. And so he took a notebook, a pen, and his Bible, and he sat there, and without anyone saying a word to him about anything related to Jesus, he opened up the scripture and he started Romans, and he bowed his head in confession of Jesus Christ as Lord.
Wow.
And God has used him and continues to use him. 40 to 50% of the folks who serve at Teen Challenge have completed the program and then go out and get credentialed and come back and serve where they once were as students. And today he's one of our senior directors because we serve a great God.
Yes.
Who knows how to change hearts.
That's right. That's right. It's amazing what time alone with God does.
Amazing.
Many times
nothing
it changes more than time with the greatest people.
Yes, sir.
Because God is God.
It does. And it helps me to remember that everything I do is secondary to who I am. And I could never be the person that I need to be unless I spend time with the Maker who formed my heart and wants to mold me today, not yesterday only, but today into his image. And when that quiet time concludes, I am more like the one who calls me and whose name I bear, because he shows up every time.
Yes, he does. Tell me what you would say to youth workers and the discouragement they go through. One of the things that Youth Worker on Fire does is we want to reach those guys to keep those warriors fit and capable. What would you say to them to encourage them and say, here's some things that I'd like to say?
Well, Doug, let me start off with this. I don't care how nice your kids are, and I don't care how good of a youth ministry person you are, you have got addicts in your youth group, period.
Yes.
And even if by some strange stretch you didn't have an addict, you have someone who has a mom or a dad or a brother or sister who's an addict, but the chances are real good they've got addicts in their youth group. Don't let their niceness or anything mask the fact. Push past that. Get smart about addiction. Matter of fact, Teen Challenge exists. Go to our website, teenchallengeusa.com. We've got a lot of helps there for you. Teen Challenge Centers have a program called Stay Sharp, and what it does is the Teen Challenge team will come in and they will do an hour presentation that's riveting, that will talk to the youth groups about making the right choices about chemicals, the right choices about premarital sex, right choice about attitudes. And what we do is we send our youngest and our best guys or girls with them. Yeah. And that team will captivate this youth group. So whatever you do, don't think you're alone. We are here to help. Teen Challenge has resources, and we could come alongside of you to identify and to deal with the issues, both with regard to the addicts and their families.
Tell people how they can get in touch with you.
1-855-END-ADDICTION. 855-END-ADDICTION, teenchallengeusa.com.
Joe, you're awesome, man. Thank you so much for being here.
We serve an awesome God. Thank you, Doug.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Blessing.
brother.
Appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.